Hello and welcome to this demo video on the Get integration introduced in Gluware 5.6 that released on May 15th of 2025. Let's get logged into our Gluware instance. So here we are in Gluware, and what I want to highlight is the steps for enabling the Get integration are mostly through settings and org level. So once you go into your organizational settings, you have the integrations view. And we're going to go to the integrations view. And the Get integration, the purpose of it is to sync code from the Gluware database, the Gluware system, to an external repo. So we actually can do that in two ways. First is just by coming into integrations and ticking this box which says enable local repository. What this will do is on your Gluware instance, which is the server that you're running Gluware on, it will spin up another container and run Get in that container. And when you perform pushes, it will push content to your local repository. So as an administrative user, you can SSH into your server, you can use Get commands, and you can look at that content. So just because it's very basic, we're not going to show that part of it, but just know that when you enable local repo, you can do that. We're going to be focused on the next step, which is probably much more common for people to do in addition to local repo, is enabling a remote repo. So with a remote repo, we are using the Get protocol, and with it, we can sync to external Git repositories. And we've tested with two of the most popular out there, both GitHub and Bitbucket. But in reality, really any Git compliant repo we should be able to synchronize to. So let's go through the steps. So step one is setting up your remote repo itself. So in my case, I have on this tab 2 here, I have my GitHub repo set up, and I've gone into to enable Gluware to push content into this repo. There's several steps, but in short, you got to go into your settings, and in the settings view, you got to navigate down into developer settings, and then you can, in my case, you have two options. You can do SSH connection, or you can use a personal access token, and I'm using the personal access token option. So you just go into tokens, you generate your token, and then you're off and running. I don't want to show my token, but just know that that's where you do it. So once you have your token, inside Gluware, you have to navigate into your credential manager. This is essentially the vault that is integrated into your Gluware instance, where you should be handling all of your credential management. And I have added a secret here. If I go in and edit it, I named it the GitHub Pat because it's a personal access token. My source is Gluware. My secret type is a Gluware system secret, and I copy and pasted the personal access token there. So that's all you need to do. Now with this GitHub Pat, you can reference this, and we always keep your secrets confidential and never pass them in clear text. So once that step is done, now you go into settings, organization, and here you need to define how Gluware can connect to your instance. So in this case, we'll go into connections. Connections is a new view within Gluware 5.6. The purpose of it is to kind of centralize all your external API or SSH type connections whenever you're connecting to remote systems, not down to the network layer, not the network devices, but other things you're connecting to potentially like in the management plane, like ServiceNow or the Cisco support API or whatever you might be configuring. This is where they go. So in the connections view, let's go ahead and edit this and see how I've set it up. So I've named it GitHub because that is the repo that I'm using. And I have selected in the drop-down a Git repository connection. Now, what I do want to highlight is the way in which we connect to repos is going to be specific to those repos in terms of how you pass credentials when authenticating. So what I do want to point out is that in two ways to get help. One is you can you can go into the Copilot for operators and you can ask it questions like, how do I configure my GitHub connection? Hit send. And then it is going to use the processing that has been augmented with our help and our processes, and it's going to explain to you how you do that. So, one, let's say new path, since we've introduced our Gluware operational Copilot and Gluware 5.5, is leveraging the Copilot for various procedures or how do I do things within Gluware. So it is spitting this out. Let me go ahead and maximize it. And it's going to tell you right here what you need to do. What I do want to highlight here is you do have optionality. You can use SSH for connecting, or you can use HTTP with your token. For GitHub, which is what I'm using, this is the string that you would need to enter. So basically, this part, Gluware will insert your token into this path, and then you put your GitHub path. So that's just pulling it up through Copilot for operators. One other mention is that, of course, we have the help file, and you can search help for get, and all of it's in the help file as well. All right, so now that you know you can get help, you can read the manual or ask the Copilot. I have put in my URL, which this particular part of the URL is my GitHub location. So this is the GitHub instance or a repo that I'm syncing with. I'm using the protocol HTTPS, not SSH. I'm using my access token. So that credential I set up, if I click on the drop down, any of the credentials I want to reference are here. So that's the one I'm referencing. And then I'm leaving the repository name, the origin name, the root path, and the main branch. And I do recommend you leverage the test connection. Make sure you're connecting successfully, that you have this set up. So now that you have your connection defined, now in the integrations view, you check this box to enable remote repository. Then from the drop-down, you choose whatever you've configured. You can have more than one connection in repo for various reasons. But in this case, I'm choosing that GitHub remote connection. Again, I can test it from here as well. Looks good. Once you have it set up, and I've tested it good, you can enable a regular sync like daily, which I think is good practice. But you also have to do your initial sync. So once you do have it set up, what I recommend you do is you go ahead and execute the sync data. So clicking on this button will connect to that remote repo, and it will take all the constructs in Gluware that we support today, which I'll go into more, but it's your audits, your config modeling constructs, all of that is synchronized into the repo. So when that happens, when you navigate back to repo, you're going to see this source any. This is Gluware. If I click on this, I'm going to see my instances in my store construct node. If I navigate into this, I see the nodes. If I go back here, the instances, these are what I would kind of align my thinking with the two primary applications on the Gluware side that we're syncing with. So I have my audit policies. So this should look familiar. If you look at all of the audit policies here now in my Get repo, if I navigate back over to Gluware and I navigate into config drift and audit under audit policies, all of these audit policies, if I, again, double click into any one like my Cisco standard config audit and look at the policy itself, this policy is here as well. So Cisco standard config audit, Gluware artifacts, in this case, an audit, everything is in JSON format. So I see the full JSON of my audit here, and it's essentially backed up. So there are other ways in which it integrates with the app. So I did want to just first show, here's an example of my audits that are backed up. So if I navigate back to instance and I go into the construct, this is the constructs that make up config modeling. So my nodes, globals, features, and domains. So if I go into features under NTP and I see example iOS NTP, if I click on this, I see the construct that we're using for the config modeling policy. So now that you see, all of your audits, all of your config modeling constructs are all backed up into Get, let's talk about the two main use cases of this. So use case number one is just the openness and transparency to know that all the Gluware constructs are being pushed into a code repo. So you can version control them, you can review them. They're available, from let's call it an infrastructure as code practice, where as Gluware is being used to automate the infrastructure, the code Gluware generates via user input around audits and config management constructs are all now available. So it's really fully open to you, and it's very transparent. I will point out that with something like audits, you did already have the ability to, let's say, export an audit, and it exports in JSON format. So there was a method to take content out of Gluware. In most cases, you're exporting and importing the JSON constructs. But let's go into the second use case, which is one of the main reasons we implemented this. You have typically multiple users, many users in the Gluware system. Let's say you take a critical audit like a CIS audit or a company standard audit or something for compliance, and let's say somehow a junior engineer either deletes important rules or deletes the entire audit itself. Well, if you're deployed on a VM, you could potentially, if you backed up the VM, you could maybe recover it using that kind of method. But if you haven't exported it and saved it outside, you might be out of luck. And that's a pain point some of our customers have got to. Now with the new Get integration, every time, once you sync, this original audit is already saved. Now if I make any changes, if I just take this rule, just say test here, and just edit the name and hit back and hit save, now I've generated another change. So once you've enabled version control or Get integration, you're going to see a new view in your app list here, and you're going to click on it, and it's going to show all of the pending changes that need to be synchronized. So that's a brand new view. And from here, I can go ahead and push. I can select all of these, multi-select, and say push. And I could say, update to, audit, whatever I want to say. I could say confirm. And then I push to the repo. And then those changes are synchronized. So that's new, the version control view. Also, when you're in config, drift, and audit in your audit policies, again, if I go back into that audit policy, now I have the view here as well. And let's say that this one, the update to audit, actually broke my audit or something bad happened. I can actually apply a previously backed up instance. So this was my initial version. I can just hit apply, which is going to apply it back, apply those changes back into my instance. I hit apply, and then here it is back in here, and I have to hit save. So now if I navigate back into that NTP operational command, the edit of the name is gone. So you can recover back to changes. I quickly show that in config model editor. I navigate into my config model editor. So here we are, we're managing features like banner and DNS and NTP. So let's just go ahead and go with NTP. And let's say someone comes in and edits. By the way, when I click on the JSON view, this JSON instance is what's getting saved into the repo. But obviously we, Gluware users prefer to work in either in CLI or in form fill. So in this example, we have a hard-coded NTP server value. Let's say I change that to 8.8.8, and I hit save. So just note that when you make changes in config modeling, it does take sometimes up to 10 seconds before you see the change pending. But once you have a change, you also have a new view here in the config model editor where you have your version control. So I just had, a change here that I executed. I can push that change as well. So again, you can either push from here, push and reapply, or you can do it from the version control view here. If I go back into here, I can see my global CLI command list. My iOS NTP server has been updated. So I can select all of these pending changes and I can say sync or push, right? Update to audit and NTP, whatever, and hit confirm. Okay, so now that we pushed our changes, let's go ahead and navigate back over to the config model editor. And just for context sake, we'll go from the node view. So I was working under a router and we were working with this construct, which is iOS NTP server CLI. So let me double click on that. So again, just to recall, this is where I've updated an NTP server to 8.8.8.8. And I mentioned that when you click the JSON view, this is the code structure Gluware is creating. It's an instance of JSON populated with those values. And so when you are looking for this file inside your Git repo, I do recommend you go ahead and just copy this. You can hit edit and then do a control C and copy it. That way, when you navigate into your code repo and you want to find that file, for example, it could be easy to select the wrong one. Like this example, iOS NTP is not the right file. If we do go to file and copy and paste this in, and I can then click on this file here, I see that this is the file. So this is the JSON file with the NTP server 8.8.8.8 because it is a CLI command, the type of feature that we sync. So you can see here that this change I made in Gluware was updated and this was pushed into my repo and it is essentially backed up. So with that, hopefully this is clear and demonstrates the value of the Git integration, really with I would say at least the two key use cases of syncing your repo for transparency and backup, and then also with the ability to reapply previous instances, you can recover from an error or deletion. And we will continue to expand this integration with Git. We already have features underway coming in the next release. So thank you for your time and interest in Gluware. Have a great day.